Welcome back with a smiling face. Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. The Ring of Destiny. Episode 4. Chapter 66. Chen Baoqiu's family sat down on the sofa. Sun Fuhe hurriedly poured tea and water, and he didn't forget to shout to the bedroom, "Xiao Meng, you Uncle Chen and the others are here, come out quickly, Fu Hai, don't be so polite. We're embarrassed to disturb us all of a sudden." Chen Baoqiu felt very embarrassed when he saw that Sun Fuhe was so enthusiastic. "Old monitor, what's so embarrassing about this? We haven't seen each other for many years. When you come to me, just treat it as your own home. I'll book a hotel at noon, and we'll have a good drink," Sun Fu said while pouring tea for Chen Baoqiu by the sea. At this time, Sun Xiaomeng came out, changed into a sportswear, with a hanging tail, looking very youthful and energetic. Sun Xiaomeng glanced and set her eyes on David. She found that David was all over the street, and he looked very dirty. "Xiaomeng, don't call Uncle Chen," Sun Fuhe said to Sun Xiaomeng. "Hello Uncle Chen." Sun Xiaomeng called out absent-mindedly. The whole person didn't seem to care, and there was a trace of disdain in his eyes. "You child, how?" Seeing Sun Xiaomen's attitude, Sun Fuhe was about to get angry, but was stopped by Chen Baoqiu. "Okay." Chen Baoqiu hurriedly stopped Sun Fuhe and nodded to Sun Xiaomeng with a smile on his face. The two families sat down and chatted together, and it was obvious that Sun Xiaomeng was a little uncomfortable. "Brother Chen, I heard my old grandson say that after you retired from the army, you entered politics. After so many years, you should be all bureau-level cadres now, right?" Li Fengxia asked Chen Baoqiu. When Li Fengxia asked, Chen Baoqiu blushed and smiled awkwardly. "No, I've already retired. How old are you to retire? Is it too early?" Li Fengxia said in shock. "Okay, there's so much nonsense. If you ask questions, check your household registration," Sun Fuhe glared at Li Fengxia. In fact, as soon as Chen Baoqiu and the others entered the door, Sun Fuhe noticed that something was wrong. He opened a company and dealt with various officials all year round. Chen Baoqiu doesn't have that kind of official spirit at all. It's just that he didn't point it out, because he knew that his wife was a snob. If he knew that Chen Baoqiu's family were ordinary people, he would have turned his face on the spot. "I just asked casually, just curious, what are you anxious about?" Li Fengxia rolled her eyes at Sun Fuhe, and then continued to face Chen Baoqiu. "Brother Chen, at what level did you retire?" Seeing Li Fengxia's questioning, Chen Baoqiu knew that he couldn't hide it, not to mention that he was asking for help, so he didn't need to hide anything, so he smiled awkwardly and said, "I was fired." Chen Baoqiu told everything about his experiences in the past few years. At this time, Chen Baoqiu didn't think about what to lose. His face was worthless to him now. When Li Fengxia finished listening, the smile on her face disappeared immediately, and she rolled her eyes. On the other hand, Sun Fuhe looked shocked. "Old monitor, why didn't you inform me that you've had such a hard time all these years? It's all over, and now David has come out. I don't think I want to ask you a favor to see if I can find him a job. It's okay to be a little bit tired." Chen Baoqiu asked humbly. "Re-education prisoners, which company dares to ask for it now?" Sun Fuhe hadn't spoken yet, but Li Fengxia pouted. Now Li Fengxia's attitude is completely different from the beginning. Sun Fuhe also frowned slightly, and his expression became a little dignified. Chen Baoqiu said hurriedly, "If it's embarrassing, I'll let him go to the construction site to find a job." Chapter 67 Old Squad Leader, to tell you the truth, my company is encountering some difficulties now. If I can't get over it, I'm afraid that I will go bankrupt, and recruiting David will also delay him. Sun Fuhe sighed and said. When Chen Baoqiu heard this, he immediately said embarrassedly, Fuhe, I'm really causing you trouble. Don't worry about David's work. What happened to your company? What happened? Can you solve it? Li Fengxia sneered. Chen Baoqiu blushed with embarrassment. Shut up. Sun Fuhe gave Li Fengxia a stern look, and then said apologetically, Old Squad Leader, don't pay attention to these women. My company has some business dealings with Fuyao Decoration, and the result is the payment for the goods. They have detained them and won't give it, and now the capital chain is broken. I'm afraid it won't last long. But about David's work, I asked Xiao Meng to go to their company to ask. Their company is a group company, and the benefits are good. Let David go first and slowly start from the bottom. Dad, I'm just a salesman, how can I have any skills? Don't make trouble for me. As soon as Sun Fuhe's voice fell, Sun Xiaomeng said unhappily. You don't have the skills. Isn't that Kui Ziwen a sales manager? Can't he recruit an employee even as a manager? Sun Fuhe asked. Okay, that's it. If that Kui Ziwen doesn't even have the ability, I don't think you two are suitable. Without waiting for Sun Xiaomeng to speak, Sun Fuhe directly threatened Sun Xiaomeng. When Sun Xiaomeng heard this, she stopped talking and could only pout angrily. Old Sun, Xiaomeng lost a lot of energy when she entered that company. Aren't you causing trouble for your child? Besides, it's a large group company. Can prisoners of labor reform enter? Li Fengxia glanced at David, and then very much it was dissatisfied and said to Sun Fuhe. David was very uncomfortable listening to Li Fengxia, one prisoner of labor reform, but Sun Fuhe was a good person, and David couldn't get angry. Dad, I'm putting the ugly word up front. I'm only responsible for bringing it in. It's up to me if I can get an interview or not. Sun Xiaomeng rolled her eyes, got up and left, and went back to the bedroom. Old Squad Leader, this girl has such a temperament, don't take offense, Sun Fuhe explained to Chen Baoqiu a little embarrassedly. Chen Baoqiu gave a wry smile. He has reached this point, what else can he blame? Fuhe, I'm sorry to bother you, I still have something to do, so I won't bother. Chen Baoqiu knew that there was no point in staying any longer, and he couldn't cause conflicts in other people's families. Old Monitor, I have already booked the hotel, let's have a meal together, Sun Fuhe said hurriedly. No, you have time. Chen Baoqiu waved his hand. David also helped Barbara to stand up. Sun Fuhe also knew that the attitude of his wife and daughter was indeed uncomfortable, but he had no choice but to smile apologetically. When I have time, I will have a drink with the old Monitor alone. Sun Fuhe sent Chen Baoqiu's family out, but Li Fengxia had been sitting on the sofa without moving. Uncle Sun, what's the name of the company that owes you money? After walking out of the door, David asked Sun Fuhe. It's called Fuyao Decoration. Does the eldest nephew know anyone there? Sun Fuhe asked suspiciously. David shook his head. No, but I'll try and ask for the account for Uncle Sun. Eldest nephew, Uncle Sun has taken your heart. You finally got out of it. We can't do anything illegal. Be filial to your parents, and don't worry about my affairs. Sun Fuhe thought that David was going to violently ask for the account. After all, David just got out of prison, maybe he knew some gangsters and the like. Chapter 68 David smiled. Uncle Sun, don't worry, I won't be doing stupid things. Sun Fuhe smiled and patted David's shoulder. If you have this heart, uncle will be happy. Leaving Sun Fuhei's house, Chen Baoqiu sighed slightly. David, your uncle's son is a good man. If you find a job tomorrow, work hard and don't let people look down on you. It can be seen that Chen Baoqiu was very angry with Sun Fuhei's wife and daughter, but there is no way to do it. Whoever makes himself incompetent, has to ask others. Well, I see, David nodded. What about Hanin's child? In this situation today, I don't dare to ask for it, Barbara said a little depressed. Originally agreed to help Wang Hanin find a job together, but now I didn't mention it to Wang Hanin. When Chen Baoqiu heard this, he lit a cigarette and lowered his head without saying a word. He didn't know how to follow Wang Chongfeng. Mom, Dad, don't worry about it, I'll find a way for Hanin's work. If I can enter the company, I can bring her in. Seeing this, David comforted his parents. That's the only way. Chen Baoqiu nodded. He stopped a taxi and headed home. David sat in the car and sent a message to Lin Tianhu, telling him about Sun Fuhei and asking Lin Tianhu to go to Fuyao Decoration to get the money back. After explaining, David put away his phone, closed his eyes slightly and rested. Soon, David and the others returned to the gate of the community. At this time, Wang Hanin was walking back and forth at the gate, as if there was something urgent. Hanin, what are you doing here? Seeing Wang Hanin at the door, David asked strangely. Brother David, Wang Hanin was about to say something when he saw that Chen Baoqiu and Barbara also got out of the car, so he closed his mouth. When Chen Baoqiu saw Wang Hanin at the door, he thought he was waiting for them to ask about work, so he blushed and said to David, David, talk to Hanin, I'll go home with your mother first. Chen Baoqiu didn't know how to explain it to Wang Hanin. After all, as an elder, he promised himself yesterday, but he did nothing today. When Chen Baoqiu and Barbara left, David asked Wang Hanin, Hanin, is something wrong? Brother David, I'm afraid, those loan sharks will come to me, I'm afraid my mother will find out. With tears in her eyes, Wang Hanin said anxiously to David. Don't be afraid, Hanin, I'm here, they're here, I'll handle it for you. David patted Wang Hanin gently and said comfortingly. Brother David, don't fight, I don't want you to be caught for me. Wang Hanin can only rely on David now, but she doesn't want David to fight over her business. Don't worry, I won't fight. David smiled slightly. Just when David was talking to Wang Hanin, suddenly an off-road vehicle stopped in front of them, and got out of the car 4 big and 3 thick men. One of them was wearing a big gold chain, with a short head and a fierce look on his face. When Wang Hanin saw these people, he was so frightened that he immediately hid behind David. Little girl, how is the money prepared? If you don't pay back the money today, I will move the things from your house, the guy with the gold chain asked Wang Hanin. I don't have any money, can I have a grace period for a few days? Wang Hanin asked timidly. No, not even for a day. If you don't have anything valuable at home, then you can come with me. Seeing that you are very handsome, you can still be worth a lot of money. After the guy with the golden chain finished speaking, he grabbed Wang Hanin directly, ignoring the existence of David. Chapter 69. But just as the guy stretched out his hand, David grabbed it. I'll give you the money she owes you, don't do it, David said lightly to the guy with the golden chain. You give it. The guy looked at David up and down, saw David dressed in ordinary clothes, and his body was no more than 200, and sneered, do you know how much she owes us? 1 million, David said. Humph, 1 million is not enough, the guy with the golden chain snorted coldly. How can it not be enough? You told me last week that as long as I pay back 1,000,000, upon hearing this, Wang Hanan hurriedly asked loudly. Last week was last week. Don't I need interest on my money? Now it's 1.3 million, not a penny less. The guy with the gold chain raised the corner of his mouth slightly and said contemptuously. When Wang Hanan heard it, the whole person was stunned. This week, the price has risen by 300,000. Even if he is a money printing machine, he is afraid that he will not be able to repay the loan shark. Okay, 1.3 million, I'll give you, David said lightly. Seeing David's answer so happily, the guy was stunned for a moment, and even Wang Hanan's eyes were wide open, looking at David in disbelief. Brother David, where do you have so much money? Wang Hanan knew that David couldn't have so much money. He just got out of prison a few days ago and he didn't have a job. How could he have more than 1 million? The guy with the golden chain heard what Wang Hanan said, and immediately looked at David fiercely and said, Boy, are you sure you have money? If you dare to play with me, you should know the consequences, right? With that said, the guy took out a dagger and gently scratched his chin. Seeing the other party take out the dagger, Wang Hanan's face turned even paler with fright, and he hid behind David tightly. I told you to give it to you, and I will give it to you. Just go to the bank with me to withdraw money. David's face was calm, without the slightest panic. The guy with the golden chain saw that David was so calm, and couldn't help but flash a hint of admiration in his eyes and said, Okay, seeing as you are also a guy, I will believe you and go to the bank with you. After the guy with the gold chain finished speaking, he stepped aside to move out of the way. After a glance, a younger brother immediately opened the car door. Let's go, get in the car, the guy with the gold chain shook his head. Hanan, go home, don't tell your mother and my parents, I'll be back in a while. David turned around and said softly to Wang Hanan. Brother David, Wang Hanan took David's arm with worry in his eyes. Don't worry, I'll be fine, David smiled slightly, then turned and walked towards the car. Looking at the car leaving, Wang Hanan burst into tears. She didn't know what would happen after David was taken away. Soon, the car took David to the door of a bank. Remember, don't play tricks on me, we'll be waiting for you outside, the guy with the golden chain threatened David. David ignored him and walked straight into the bank. At this time, many people in the bank lobby were doing business, and David could only wait in line at the back. Sir, if you want to withdraw money, you can go to the ATM so you don't have to queue, a staff member of the bank said very politely to David. I withdraw a lot of money, and the ATM can't get it out, David smiled politely. Sir, how much do you withdraw? The staff asked. More than 1 million, as soon as David's voice fell, many people in the queue in front of him instantly turned to look at him. After all, more than 1 million is not a small number. Chapter 70 David. At this time, in the front team, a fashionably dressed, a bit coquettishly dressed woman shouted at David. The woman also wore a big sunglasses, covering half of her face. Who are you? David frowned slightly and looked at the woman. It's me, Li Dongmei, the woman took off her sunglasses. David suddenly realized, it turned out to be you, I don't even recognize it. Li Dongmei was a classmate of David in middle school, and the two of them were still at the same table. Back then, Li Dongmei was sloppy, but not as fashionable as it is now. Li Dongmei glanced at David, and then said with a bit of sneer in her eyes, I heard that you are in prison, when did you come out? In this kind of public place, the matter of going to jail is even mentioned directly, obviously to make David embarrassed. When the two of them were at the same table, this Li Dongmei also wrote a love letter to David. After all, David's father was in politics at that time, and his family was not bad. Many girls liked David. It's just that David didn't pay much attention to Li Dongmei at all, because Li Dongmei at that time was not outstanding at all. Just a few days after I came out, David smiled lightly and answered truthfully. As soon as I came out, I came to withdraw more than 1 million? It's really rich, Li Dongmei sneered. David just smiled and didn't answer. Instead, he asked, when did you come to Horrendal? I heard that you won't go to school after graduating from junior high school. Yes, I didn't go to school after graduating from junior high school, but now I'm much better than your college graduate, Li Dongmei said, pointing to a fat middle-aged man sitting on a chair beside him. The person said, that's my boyfriend, the owner of a company with tens of millions of assets. I'm going to apply for a card today, and the money will be under my control in the future. Li Dongmei looked smug, although the middle-aged man looked older than her father, but she herself didn't feel anything wrong, as long as the other party had money. David looked at the fat middle-aged man, and just smiled slightly. Congratulations, I found a rich boyfriend. Although David only smiled slightly, Li Dongmei felt a wave of disgust in her heart. She felt that David was laughing at herself. Sir, if you withdraw more than 500,000, you need to make an appointment in advance. Have you made an appointment? After the bank staff knew that David was a reform through labor prisoner who had just been released, his tone became a little tougher. I have an urgent need, so I don't have an appointment. Can you accommodate me? David asked the bank staff. David, what are you doing in such a hurry with more than 1 million? You don't look like you have 1 million. You won't come over to pretend, right? Li Dongmei sneered. David ignored her, but took out his card and handed it to the staff of the bank. I have 10 million in this card, and now I only want to withdraw 1.3 million. Can you accommodate me? 10 million? What are you kidding me? Do you have 10 million? You are just a prisoner who just got out of prison, how could you have so much money? Li Dongmei sneered, looking at David with disdain. And the staff of the bank was also a little impatient, and said with a cold face, even if you have 20 million, this is the bank's rules, you can't. But before the words were finished, the staff of the bank suddenly saw the card in David's hand. Because the bank card was given to David by Reuben, and Reuben is the richest man in Horrendal, his card has obvious special signs, the bank staff can see it at a glance. This is the bank card of the Sua family, and if David could hold the Sua family bank card, he would definitely not be an ordinary person. Chapter 71 Sir, sit here for a while, I'll go and ask the manager right away. Seeing the card in David's hand, the attitude of the staff suddenly changed 180 degrees. Okay. David nodded and sat aside to rest, and the staff member hurriedly went to ask the manager for instructions. This time, Li Dongmei was a little confused. She didn't understand why the staff of this bank was suddenly so polite to David. David, do you really have 10 million? Seeing that the staff member suddenly changed his attitude, Li Dongmei asked David with some doubts. What's your business? David smiled coldly. David, let me tell you, it is illegal to forge financial documents. You are a prisoner of labor reform, how can you have 10 million? Don't think I don't know, your family is still living in the old community, and your dad is now sweeping the streets for people. How could you have 10 million? Li Dongmei would never believe that David really had 10 million. If he really had the money, would he still live in such a broken community? And David just got out of jail, and it's impossible to earn 10 million in a few days. She felt that David must have deliberately pretended to be coercive in front of her because of her own reasons, that's why she said this. When other customers in the bank heard what Li Dongmei said, they also looked at David curiously. These days, they all use the card to withdraw money. If there is any money in the card, they will know after a check. No one is really stupid enough to counterfeit the bank card it. After a while, the bank staff who had just left came over with a middle-aged man, who was wearing glasses and was in a hurry. "Hello sir, I'm the manager of this bank. How can I help you?" The middle-aged man walked in front of David and asked politely. "I want to withdraw 1.3 million, but I don't have an appointment. Can I withdraw it?" David said and handed the card to the bank manager. After seeing the bank card, the bank manager's expression changed slightly. "Yes, sir, you don't need to make an appointment, but we don't have that much cash now. I'll send someone to deliver the cash from other places immediately." "Sir, come to my office to rest first. Come down." David nodded and got up to go to the office to wait. Seeing this, Li Dongmei was dumbfounded. She stopped the bank manager and said, "What's going on with your bank? Why can you withdraw money without an appointment? He's just a prisoner of labor reform. You don't even check if he has any money in his card. Do you agree? If so, I will also take 1 million now," Li Dongmei roared aggressively, and then said to her boyfriend, "Husband, we also want to take 1 million. Li Dongmei's boyfriend came over, glanced at David, and also took out a bank card and handed it to the bank manager. "I also have 10 million in this card, and I want to withdraw 1 million now." The bank manager didn't even look at it, and said lightly, "You can't pick it up without an appointment." This sentence can make Li Dongmei mad. This is simply a double standard scene. David's card has 10 million, and he can withdraw money directly without making an appointment. Their card also has 10 million, but they have to make an appointment. What kind of broken bank are you? I'm going to complain to you. Why can't he make an appointment, but we have to make an appointment? We also have 10 million in our card, can't you hear? Li Dongmei roared at the bank manager. This gentleman is the supreme VIP of our bank, so there is no need to make an appointment, and you are just ordinary customers, there is no comparison, the bank manager said indifferently. Li Dongmei's lungs were about to explode with anger, and her eyes suddenly stared. "He is your supreme VIP? Are you mistaken? He is just a labor prisoner, just a prisoner who was just released." Chapter 72. This gentleman's card is the custom card of the Sui family. We only recognize the card and not the person. Do you think you can compare with the Sui family? A look of contempt flashed in the bank manager's eyes. The words of the bank manager made Li Dongmei stunned for a moment, and everyone around them exclaimed. You must know that the Sui family is the richest man in Horindal. No wonder the staff member changed his attitude when he saw the card in David's hand. With the Sui family's card, let alone come to the bank to withdraw money in person, as long as a phone call is made, the bank will send someone to deliver the money in person. Customers like this are all the targets of major banks. And when Li Dongmei's boyfriend heard that David was holding a custom card from the Sui family, his face instantly turned pale. If David really had something to do with the Sui family, with just one sentence, his small company would soon go bankrupt. No, impossible, how could he have a custom card from the Sui family? He must have stolen it, or maybe he picked it up. It's impossible for him to have a relationship with the Sui family. Li Dongmei didn't believe it. David was just an ordinary person who couldn't be in the ordinary. He just got out of prison. How could he be involved with the Sui family? Seeing that Li Dongmei was still shouting, the bank manager's face turned cold, "Security guard, blast them out for me." Soon, 2 security guards came over and chased Li Dongmei out, and Li Dongmei's boyfriend was also chased out. "What's going on here? What's your classmate's relationship with the Sui family?" Li Dongmei's boyfriend asked worriedly. "I haven't heard that he has something to do with the Sui family. If he has something to do with the Sui family, he won't go to jail. It's only been a few days since he came out. How could he have something to do with the Sui family? I think he must have picked up the bank card. Yes, this bank manager is a jerk," Li Dongmei said angrily. "Okay, don't care if he picked it up or not, let's go." Li Dongmei's boyfriend doesn't want to be entangled. If David is really related to the Sui family, then he will be out of luck. Li Dongmei and her fat-headed boyfriend had just walked out of the bank. They had been waiting outside for David's guys to see them, and they immediately greeted them. "Boss Chu, what a coincidence, I didn't expect to meet here," the guy with the gold chain smiled and said. "It turned out to be Gangzi, what are you doing here?" Li Dongmei's boyfriend asked. "There's a guy who owes us money, and we're not waiting for him to withdraw it," Gangzi said lightly. "Oh, then wait, I still have something to do, and have time to drink together." After Li Dongmei's boyfriend finished speaking, he pulled Li Dongmei and wanted to leave. After all, these people are not good people, and he doesn't want to have too many intersections with these people. But who knew that Li Dongmei did not move, but asked in surprise, "Is the person who owes you money called David?" "David?" Gangzi was stunned, but quickly reacted, "Yes, it seems that his name is David Chen, and he owes us 1.3 million. When Li Dongmei heard this, she was so happy that she almost jumped up. "I said, why did David have to withdraw 1.3 million today? It turned out that he owed money to others and was trapped in it." Li Dongmei sneered, and then said to the Gangzi, "Why does he owe you all money?" Gangzi didn't answer Li Dongmei, but looked at Boss Chu on the other side. That Boss Chu smiled, "This is my girlfriend." When Gangzi heard it, he immediately smiled, "Since it's Boss Chu's girlfriend, I won't hide it from you. It's a woman who borrowed usury from us. It's not that he owes us what this kid owes us. It turned out to be a usury loan, then you can ask for more interest. David has 10 million in his card." Li Dongmei whispered to the Gangzi. Chapter 73 10 million. Gangzi was stunned, and then his face flashed with joy. Does he really have 10 million? Look at that kid, he doesn't look like a rich man. Li Dongmei hurriedly explained, "What are you doing to deceive you? He said it himself in the bank just now. After a while, he can actually withdraw 1.3 million. Doesn't that prove that he really has money in his card?" "Makes sense." Gangzi nodded. "Okay, I still have something to do, let's go quickly." Boss Chu pulled Li Dongmei hard. "What are you afraid of? Let's watch here for a while, wait for David to come out, and then let's go. I want to see if David really has 10 million. Li Dongmei threw it away, she didn't want to leave, she still wanted to see David's embarrassment for a while. Boss Chu had no choice but to stand by and wait. 10 minutes later, David came out with a big bag full of cash. Seeing David come out with a big bag in his hand, Gangzi brought someone to greet him immediately. Seeing this, Li Dongmei also followed, she wanted to see if David really took out the money. When David saw that Li Dongmei didn't leave, he was slightly taken aback, but he didn't care. "Boy, where's the money?" Gangzi asked David. David threw the bag in his hand to the ground, and all the white bills in the bag were exposed. Seeing so much money, Gangzi's little brother's eyes are red. Then Li Dongmei was also a little surprised. 1.3 million, a lot of money, it's all here. David said lightly. Gang's younger brother hurriedly wanted to collect the money, but was stopped by that Gangzi. Boy, 1.3 million is probably not enough. Although Gangzi also wanted to take the money, but after knowing that David had 10 million, he wanted to extort more. What do you mean? David frowned. It doesn't make any sense. I just miscalculated the interest, and now it costs 2 million with the principal and interest. The corner of Gang's mouth raised slightly. David's face turned gloomy, and there was a bit of killing intent in his eyes. David, don't you have 10 million? 2 million is nothing, just go in and get some. Li Dongmei looked at David gloatingly and said. David ignored that Li Dongmei, but said to Gangzi, 1,300,000, if you don't want it, then I will save it again. David bent down to pick up the money and save it again. Boy, this money is no longer yours, you can't move it. Gangza lifted his foot and stepped on the purse. The two men on the side immediately reached out and grabbed David's shoulder, trying to control David. But the two of them were surprised to find that no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't shake David one bit. David's eyes flashed coldly, he stretched out his hand to grab the wrists of the two men, and squeezed gently. There was a sound of bones shattering, and the two men screamed in pain in an instant. People who dare to touch me, court death. When the Gangza saw this, his face sank, and he kicked David. Kill him! Kill him! Seeing this, Li Dongmei was extremely happy and shouted desperately. Bang! But who knows, just as the Gangza lifted his foot, David also kicked it out, and the latter came first and kicked the Gangza out. Immediately after David twisted his hands, the arms of the two men were suddenly twisted like a twist, and the painful wailing sound came directly from the mouths of the two. At this time, there was only one younger brother left, who was so frightened that he turned his head and ran away. These thugs have no loyalty at all. David slowly walked towards the Gangzi. At this time, Gang's face was pale, and his internal organs were like a knife twisted. Chapter 74. Seeing David walking towards him, Gangza desperately wanted to get up, but the severe pain made him unable to stand up at all. David's kick was too heavy. You, what are you going to do? Behind me is the Along gang, and our gang leader is Feng Sihai. When Gangza saw David's gloomy face, he was so frightened that he hurriedly moved out of the Along gang. Feng Sihai. David sneered, if you don't say that you belong to the Along gang, I can spare you, but now you have no chance. After David finished speaking, he stepped on it with one foot and directly crushed Gang's legs. Even the best medical skills could not be connected. What? The severe pain made Gangza scream desperately, rolling on the ground constantly. Seeing David's ruthless action with a cold face, Li Dongmei was frightened, her body was trembling desperately, and her eyes were full of horror. As for Boss Chu, he was sweating profusely and his legs trembled slightly. David picked up the money on the ground, but just gave Li Dongmei a cold look, and with that one glance, Li Dongmei slumped on the ground in fright. Seeing Li Dongmei like that, David sneered, walked directly into the bank, and deposited the money again. When David returned home, he found that Wang Hanin was still there with Wang Chongfeng. Wang Hanin saw David back, and hurriedly greeted him excitedly. Wang Hanin just wanted to ask David concerned, but remembered that her mother was still there, so she didn't speak. David, where did you kid go? Hanin has been waiting for you for a long time. You two go out for a walk and have a good chat. Barbara heard that David was back, so she reprimanded with some dissatisfaction. Mom, I've dealt with something. David explained. Aunt Chen, I followed brother David out for a walk. Wang Hanan took David and walked out. She now wants to know how David handled the matter. Okay, let's go, I'm chatting with you, and then we'll have dinner at my house at noon. Barbara nodded happily. David left with Wang Hanan, and Barbara said with a look of relief, he is Aunt Wang, I think these two children are a good match, I think the two of them are not bad either, ha ha ha. Wang Chongfeng also laughed. Brother David, did those people embarrass you? Did they beat you? Walking out the door, Wang Hanan asked eagerly. No, you don't have to worry about usury. It's all right. I will work hard in the future. I will go to the interview tomorrow. If I can, I will take you there. I will find a boyfriend in the future, and I will also keep my eyes open. David smiled slightly. Wang Hanan nodded, looking at David with a bit of love, but David didn't look at her. David just regarded Wang Hanan as his sister and had no other ideas, so he didn't want Wang Hanan to misunderstand. Just when David followed Wang Hanan downstairs in the community, suddenly the phone rang. It was Sonia. David, where have you been? Why are you not at the Pinehurst Villa? I asked the security guard and said that you are all gone. Sonia went to Pine Bay to find David and found that David was not there. My parents are not used to living there, so I came back to live here. Although it is a bit shabby, there are many neighbors in the neighborhood, and they are all acquaintances. David lied because he didn't know why his parents left Pinehurst Villa. Oh! Sonia snorted, obviously a little disappointed. After a few more chats, David hung up the phone. Brother David, is that your girlfriend? Wang Hanan asked in a low voice after David hung up the phone. David was stunned, not knowing how to answer Wang Hanan. Whether Sonia is his girlfriend now, David himself doesn't know. After all, the two have not officially established a relationship. Chapter 75. Seeing David stunned, Wang Hanan smiled. If you don't want to say it, don't say it, it doesn't matter. David just smiled and didn't speak. After walking around with Wang Hanan for a while, the two went back for lunch. At the same time, in Horrendal People's Hospital, Jordan was lying on the hospital bed with some boredom. He didn't want to live in the hospital, he wanted to go home, but his father Xiao Yan didn't agree and insisted on letting him recover in the hospital and go back. After all, with the financial resources of the Xiao family, even if Jordan stayed in the hospital for a year, it would not be a problem. Just when Jordan was bored, the door of the ward was pushed open, and Delia walked in with a lunchbox. Brother Lei, I have good news for you. As soon as she entered the door, Delia said excitedly. What good news? Jordan asked. Then David was kicked out of the Pinehurst Villa, and he might fall out with Sonia, Delia said excitedly. Why? Jordan was also overjoyed. If David is not protected by the Sua family, then David will be nothing. He wants to kill David, just a matter of minutes. Why else? I guess that Sonia doesn't look down on David anymore, presumably she is just teasing David. After all, the two are not in the same family, so how could Sonia like him? This morning, the security guard in Pinehurst Villa said, David's parents left with their belongings and returned to the original community. Delia said. Ha ha ha, that's great. Jordan laughed loudly. When I feel better, let's see how I clean up that David. I want to make his life worse than death. The next morning, Sun Fuhe called. He had asked Sun Xiaomeng to pick up David and go to Sun Xiaoman's company together. When Chen Baoqiu heard this, he hurriedly urged David to get up. David, you have to perform well today. This is a big company. If you really want to be able to work in it, and become a department manager in the future, you will be able to settle down in the future. Chen Baoqiu exhorted David. Got it, Dad. David nodded, took a piece of clothing and put it on his body. You're an interview, how can you wear these clothes? Chen Baoqiu frowned slightly. Wear a suit, be quick. Dad, I don't have a suit. David has no habit of wearing a suit at all, so he has never bought a suit. This is Barbara walking over and said to David, Nonsense, why not? You forgot to buy a suit for you 3 years ago, it was for your wedding, and the result, when Barbara said this, she hurriedly closed her mouth. Today, David's interview, she didn't want to talk about the past. Soon, David put on the suit he bought 3 years ago. Although it was quite old, it was still very new. After all, David had never worn it once. My son is handsome in a suit, come on, Chen Baoqiu patted David on the shoulder. David, come over and let Mom touch. Barbara couldn't see it, so she could only touch it with both hands, feeling the way David was wearing a suit. At this time, downstairs in their house, a red BMW 3 Series parked at the gate of the community. In front of the car, Sun Xiaomeng looked at the relatively dilapidated community with some disgust. What kind of crappy place is this? It stinks to death, and it still lives in it. Sun Xiaomeng frowned and pinched her nose. I really don't know what Dad thinks, but he even asked me to pick him up, Sun Xiaomeng muttered, and looked at her watch from time to time. At this time, Sun Xiaomeng was wearing a professional attire and her fair legs were exposed, which attracted many people's attention, while Sun Xiaomeng was full of contempt. I simply despise the people who come out of this community. After waiting for a while, seeing David still not coming down, Sun Xiaomeng called Chen Baoqiu. Chapter 76. This is the call that Sun Xiaomeng asked for from Sun Fuhe. After Chen Baoqiu answered the phone, Sun Xiaomeng said rudely, What time is it? How long do you want me to wait? I have no concept of time, don't. You forgot that it was your family who begged me, and you asked me to wait. After Sun Xiaomeng finished speaking, she hung up the phone without waiting for Chen Baoqiu to speak. On the other side, after Chen Baoqiu answered the phone, he was stunned for a moment, and his face was a little embarrassed. After all, at his age, he was beaten by a little girl from Sun Xiaomeng, and he felt very uncomfortable, but he thought that David had to rely on others. Chen Baoqiu endured the job introduction. Dad, who's calling? David asked. It's Xiaomeng, they're waiting downstairs, you go downstairs quickly. Remember to say something nice to them, Chen Baoqiu urged David to go downstairs. David went downstairs and saw that Sun Xiaomeng was waiting at the door, so he walked over and said apologetically, I'm sorry, I kept you waiting. Seeing David, Sun Xiaomeng immediately said with a livid face, if it wasn't for my dad's words, I wouldn't be too lazy to pick you up. Look at what you're wearing. Which dynasty's suit is too old-fashioned? David frowned slightly, but still suppressed his anger and said, I bought this 3 years ago, but I haven't worn it, it's still new. The new one has AF.art, who still wears such an old-fashioned suit nowadays, Sun Xiaomeng pouted. Then why don't I go and change? David said. Forget it, what time is it? Where's the time? Get in the car. Sun Xiaomeng opened the car door with a cold face and sat up directly. David wanted to sit in the co-pilot, but just opened the door, but was stopped by Sun Xiaomeng. Sit in the back, can you also sit in the co-pilot? David frowned, and then sat in the back, while that Sun Xiaomeng didn't wait for David to sit still, and rushed out with a kick of the accelerator. Fortunately, David has the time to recover, otherwise he will fall down. Remember, you can't say you know me when you arrive at the company, and I don't care whether you can interview or not. It all depends on your own ability. Don't expect me to help you. I'm enough to introduce you to the company for an interview. On the way, Sun Xiaomeng followed David to talk a lot. The most important thing was to keep David from saying she knew her, because she was afraid that David would embarrass herself. Okay. David just replied with a good word. Soon, the car arrived at Sun Xiaomen's company, which is a collective company with a dozen floors in the entire office. Xinyu Daily Chemical Co., Limited. David raised his head, looked at the huge company name, and frowned slightly. This is the Sui family's company. If David remembers correctly, this Xinyu Daily Chemical Company is also the Sui family's business. He remembers that Sonia seems to have mentioned that this is Sonia's birthday, and the company established by Ruben for Sonia is regarded as birthday present. Sonia is the chairman and legal person of this company, but she does not participate in management and rarely comes to this company. Yes, this is the company of the Sui family, the richest man in Horindal. It is a great honor to be able to work here. The various benefits are much better than other companies, Sun Xiaomeng said very proudly. David smiled and didn't say anything, but followed Sun Xiaomeng towards the company. As soon as I walked to the door, I saw a tall and handsome young man in a suit standing at the door. This person was Sun Xiaomen's boyfriend Kui Ziwen. Xiaomeng, why did you come today? After Kui Ziwen saw Sun Xiaomeng, he immediately greeted him with a smile. Don't mention it, my dad asked me to pick up that comrade-in-arms son, so later, Sun Xiaomeng pouted, a little not very happy. Chapter 77 Kui Ziwen looked at David behind Sun Xiaomeng, a trace of contempt flashed in his eyes, and then he took Sun Xiaomen's hand and walked forward. David could only follow behind, while Kui Ziwen and Sun Xiaomeng whispered. If you don't want him to work here, I'll just swipe him down during the interview later. Anyway, today is my interview, Kui Ziwen said in a low voice. Don't be too obvious, or he will tell my dad, and my dad will kill me again. This guy has just come out of prison, so just reject him with this matter. Sun Xiaomeng also whispered in Kui Ziwen's ear. They were afraid that David would hear it, but what they didn't know was that David had listened to every word of the conversation between the two. David's listening ability is not comparable to ordinary people. David in the back laughed coldly. David didn't care about whether he could be interviewed or not. He was just going through the motions. After following Sun Xiaomeng and the others to the sales list floor, Sun Xiaomeng pointed to Kui Ziwen, and then said to David, "You go with him, remember what I told you, don't tell anyone you know each other here." David nodded, then followed Kui Ziwen to the interview office. At this time, there were already many people waiting outside. These people were all here for the interview. After all, it was a group company with good benefits, so I wanted to come. There are many people, including some students from famous universities. Wait outside, someone will call you later. After Kui Ziwen said a word, he walked directly into the office, while David found a chair and sat down to rest. "Dude, are you also here for the interview?" Sitting next to David, a young man with glasses asked David. "Yeah." David nodded. "What school did you graduate from?" "I know that many of the interviewees this time are graduates from famous universities. Look at the girl in the skirt. I heard that she is from King Bei University, and the man with the backpack is from Haida University. Graduated." With an envious expression, the young man followed David. "I'm from Beijiang Business School." David smiled slightly. "Student from Beijiang." The young man was stunned for a moment, then said in surprise, you dare to come to this company for an interview with your diploma. You are really courageous. Your university is not as good as my Langxiang Technical School. The young man looked at David with a bit of pride. He finally found someone with a degree not as good as his own. David smiled and did not speak. At this time, a girl in work clothes came over and said to everyone in the interview, "Everyone hand over your resume to me, and I will call everyone in for the interview in order." When everyone heard it, they hurriedly handed in their carefully prepared resumes. Only David sat motionless. "Sir, where's your resume?" Seeing that David didn't move, the girl asked. "I didn't prepare a resume," David said lightly. Seeing that David did not prepare a resume for the interview, the girl's eyes flashed with surprise, but she still asked aloud, "Sir, what is your name? I will call you later." "My name is David Chen," David said. The girl nodded, turned, and walked into the office. Everyone looked at David like an idiot. On this occasion, wearing an outdated suit and not preparing a resume, how could he possibly be interviewed? Only the young man who was talking to David just now looked at David a little strangely, and then suddenly whispered, "Dude, are you related?" and went through the back door. David was stunned for a moment, wondering why the young man asked such a question. "You must have gone through the back door, otherwise why didn't you prepare your resume? And the person who brought you here just now, I see it as an executive in this company, no wonder you are so calm." The young man's face was a little flattering. With a smile, he took out a box of chewing gum from his pocket and handed it to David. David was not polite either, he took it directly and threw it into his mouth. Chapter 78 Dude, if you're really related, can you say something nice to me for a while? If I can be admitted, I'll invite you to a big hotel for a meal. The young man looked at David expectantly. David smiled slightly, "Okay, if I succeed, I will give you 2 good words." "Thank you, thank you, thank you so much." The young man looked happy and kept following David to thank him. Soon, the interviews began. One by one, the interviewers walked in nervously and walked out in frustration. Even those interviewers from the famous universities were unsuccessful. Seeing that the interviewees from the famous universities all failed, the young man beside David became even more nervous. His hands were slightly clenched into fists, and his palms were full of sweat. Next, David. Soon, it was David's turn. When David got up, the young man beside him grabbed him. "Dude, you must say something nice for me, I'm counting on you," the boy said nervously. David nodded, and then walked into the office. As soon as he entered, he saw 3 people sitting behind a desk, with the girl who had just collected her resume standing beside her. That Kui Ziwan was sitting in the middle, obviously he was the main interviewer for today's interview, and the 2 left and right were just foils. Whether or not he could pass the interview only needed a word from Kui Ziwan. Kui Ziwan looked at David and said calmly, "Introduce yourself." Just as David was about to speak, he saw an interviewer beside Kui Ziwan saying, "Because you don't have a resume, you need to tell me all about your experience in the past few years after graduating from university." David nodded, and briefly explained his experience after graduation. Of course, he also said about his imprisonment. He didn't hide it, and there was nothing to hide. It's just that David said that he was in prison, but no one showed surprise to several people. Obviously, Kui Ziwan has just told a few people, so these people will not be surprised. After hearing this, Kui Ziwan closed his eyes slightly, clasped his hands on his chest, leaned on the seat without saying a word, and the girl on the side hurried forward to give Kui Ziwan a gentle massage. "Do you know what kind of company we are? Do you know who the boss of our company is?" You, a prisoner who just got out of prison, dare to come for an interview?" An interviewer smiled contemptuously. "Why don't you dare? Does your company clearly stipulate that people who have been in prison are not allowed to interview? Besides, what's wrong with being in prison? Is it a bad person who has been in prison?" David smiled lightly. "Although our company has no express regulations, but you are a reformed through labor worker. If you enter the company, it will affect our company's image. I believe that other companies will not want you to be released after serving your sentence. You'd better be self-aware." If it were you, I wouldn't even show up." The interviewer looked at David playfully. It seemed that he was deliberately humiliating David, and his voice was very loud. This time, the interviewers outside also heard it, and all of them were surprised, and the young man who just followed David was even more shocked. Damn, it turned out to be a prisoner of labor reform. I wasted a piece of chewing gum in vain. It's really bad. The boy hurried to the bathroom to wash his hands. David in the office was not angry, and smiled lightly. "If I were you, I wouldn't have the ability to be a man at all. I would have no face to sit here. You have dark circles all over your eyes. Are you looking at your wife at night? But you are not at all. It's useless. Can't sleep all night." David's words made the interviewer stunned and looked at David with a bit of horror in his eyes. He didn't understand. How did David know that he was not capable of a man? Chapter 79. This is his secret, and he has never told anyone. In the eyes of outsiders, he has a happy family and a harmonious husband and wife. Only he knows that at night, he will fall into deep pain. Now David's words hit the sore spot, which made the interviewer suddenly furious, and the blue veins on his forehead bulged. "You are talking nonsense. You don't have the ability of a man." "I have a wife and children, and my family is very happy," the interviewer roared loudly and deliberately took the child seriously, in order to refute David and prove that David is nonsense. David smiled. "Even if you have a child, it is not your own, it is not picked up, or your daughter-in-law gave birth to someone else, because your faults have fallen from childhood, and it was caused by an accident and an external force. Make you lose the ability of a man." Bang! Just after David finished speaking, the interviewer slapped the table and stood up, glaring at David and said, "You kid, investigate me." This interviewer was indeed kicked in the crotch by a donkey when he was a child, so he lost his ability to be a man, and only picked up a child after marriage. Except for those people in his hometown who knew about these things, no one in Horrendal would know about it. He deliberately stayed away from his hometown for this reason, but he didn't expect to be directly told by David. "You're not worthy of my investigation." David smiled coldly. However, the interviewer's words also proved that what David said was the truth. This time, several colleagues on the scene looked at the interviewer with strange eyes. The interviewer also seemed to feel that he had said the wrong thing, and immediately became angry and rushed towards David. Seeing that an interview was about to turn into a fight scene, Kui Ziwan could only shout angrily, "Enough is enough, sit back for me." The interviewer could only give David a stern look, and then sat back. Kui Ziwan just wanted to let his subordinates humiliate David and then tell him that it was inappropriate. He didn't expect things to turn out like this, which made Kui Ziwan a little angry. "Boy, you are not suitable to work in our company. You don't want to show us the door as you are. You better get out. Don't come again in the future." Another interviewer saw that Kui Ziwan was a little angry, and immediately reprimanded David. "There are employees like you in such a large-scale company, it's really time to rectify it." David sneered, got up and walked out. He didn't really want to work here. But just when David got up and was about to walk out, suddenly a tall, stern young man in a suit walked in. The youth carried a bit of majesty on his body, and as soon as he entered the door, he glanced at David. David also looked at the young man, and then prepared to leave. But who knew that he was directly stopped by the young man? "You are David." David looked at the young man suspiciously and nodded slightly. He didn't know the person in front of him. But if David's parents were there, they would definitely know each other. It was this person who drove David's parents away when they went to the Pinehurst villa. Mr. Singh, after Kui Ziwan saw the young man, he ran over flatteringly, and then explained, "This person is called David, and he came to apply for the job. Because he didn't meet the requirements of our company, we refused. Leave him." After the young man said a word, he looked at David again, then turned around and was about to leave. "Mr. Singh, he's a reform-through-labor inmate who just got out of jail," Kui Ziwan stopped the young man and said. The young man turned around slowly and looked at Kui Ziwan with chills in his eyes. "Are you teaching me to do things?" This shocked Kui Ziwan, shaking his head again and again. "Don't dare, don't dare." Chapter 80. The youth turned and left. Kui Ziwan and the two interviewers were all stunned, looking at David in disbelief, wondering how David and the general manager of the company knew each other. "David, how did you know me, President Singh?" Kui Ziwan asked with a puzzled face. "Is he the general manager of this company?" "I don't know him." David shook his head. David didn't know this young man, and he had never met him, but this young man had met David, and he even saw David following Sonia Ching Me and Me. The young man's name is Singh Jun. He is an international student who graduated from Stanford University abroad. After working in the SUA group, he has been reused, and this Singh Jun has also taken a fancy to Sonia and has been pursuing Sonia, but Sonia did not agree. After Ruben gave it to Sonia Company, because Sonia did not manage it, he transferred Singh Jun to be the general manager of Xinyu Daily Chemical Co., Limited, and was solely responsible for the operation and management of the company. This Singh Jun does have some strength. In a short period of time, the management of the company is well organized, and it has become the most profitable subsidiary of the SUA group. The reason why Singh Jun worked so hard was to make Sonia look after him, but when he knew that Sonia was dealing with a kid like David who had been in prison, his heart changed drastically, and he wanted to take Sonia from David. Now that David has come to the company for an interview, of course he has to seize this opportunity. As long as David stays in the company, he can have tens of thousands of ways to make David quit despite difficulties, and he can also provoke the relationship between David and Sonia. "It's really weird," Kui Ziwan frowned, but the general manager had spoken. One of his department managers didn't dare to go against it, so he could only say to David, "Go through the onboarding procedures, and then I'll send someone to show you about the company." Now Kui Ziwan doesn't dare to trouble David for the time being. He doesn't know what the relationship between David and Singh Jun is. David is also a little strange. He doesn't understand what this is, Mr. Singh, why he wants to keep himself. It seems that he knows himself. Could it be that Sonia knew that she was coming to her company for an interview and specifically asked the general manager? David frowned slightly and thought, followed the girl in the office, and was taken to go through the entry procedures. "Damn, your kid turned out to be a reform-through-labor prisoner. I'm really unlucky to have talked to you for a long time. It's too bad. Just like you'll never want to apply for a job." As soon as David went out, he was scolded by the young man who had just put on glasses. David looked at the young man. Originally, he felt that the young man was good, but he didn't want to be such a low-key guy. "Mr. Chen, please follow me here. I need an ID card for the entry procedure." "Have you brought it?" The girl who came out with David asked David. "Oh, I brought it." David handed the ID card to the girl, and then smiled gratefully. He knew that the girl asked this on purpose, just to tell the boy. Sure enough, when the young man saw that David had succeeded in the interview, his eyes suddenly widened, his face full of incredulity. However, David ignored him, but after sneering, he followed the girl and left. While David was applying for the job, in the sales manager's office, Sun Xiaomeng said angrily to Kui Ziwen, "What's the matter with you? Didn't you say you shouldn't admit him? Now he's been admitted. If you don't bore me to death in the future, my dad will definitely let me take him to work every day. Can you blame me? Who knows what that kid has to do with Boss Xing? He was directly admitted by Boss Xing, what can I do?" Kui Ziwen was also displeased. Chapter 81. Didn't you tell President Xing that he is a reform-through labor prisoner? Sun Xiaomeng continued to ask. Of course I said it. At that time, President Xing's eyes almost didn't frighten me to death. If I dared to talk too much, I would not be able to keep my position as manager. Now Kui Ziwen thinks of Xing Jun's eyes, and he has lingering fears. Does this guy really know President Xing? Sun Xiaomeng frowned. Let's take a look and then talk about it. If he really knows President Xing, we really can't target him in the future, and you have to coax him. Kui Ziwen exhorted Sun Xiaomeng. It's up to you. Sun Xiaomeng rolled her eyes and walked out. At this time, more than a dozen people in the sales department already knew that the general manager had spoken in person and recruited a prisoner who had been in prison. This kind of thing spreads very quickly in the company, especially this kind of gossip. This David must have something to do with Mr. Xing, or else he won't be wanted. People who have been in prison come with us, why do I feel so infiltrating? We'll all be careful when people come here. If this guy really has something to do with Mr. Xing, if we're not careful, we'll be out of luck. The people in the sales department gathered around and discussed. What are you doing? Don't you have to work? Sun Xiaomeng came out of the office and saw everyone gathered around discussing, so she shouted with a cold face. Although Sun Xiaomeng is just an ordinary salesperson in the sales department, he is always showing his authority. After all, Kui Ziwen is the department manager, no one dares to provoke Sun Xiaomeng. When Sun Xiaomeng shouted like this, everyone dispersed, only a short-haired girl walked towards Sun Xiaomeng. This girl's name is Wang Lanlan, and she has a good relationship with Sun Xiaomeng. Xiaomeng, did you hear that our sales department recruited a prisoner of labor reform? I heard that it was recruited by President Xing's words. It is estimated that it has something to do with President Xing, Wang Lanlan whispered to Sun Xiaomeng. Fgook, if he has something to do with President Xing, and he has something to do with President Xing, it's just luck. Sun Xiaomeng doesn't believe that David really has anything to do with the general manager. Wang Lanlan was taken aback. Do you know the one named David? Sun Xiaomeng found that she had said something wrong, and hurriedly shook her head. I don't know the prisoner of labor reform, I just think this guy just came out of prison. How could he know Mr. Xing? Don't spread the word, I will ask Manager Kui to ask Xing later. Always no. About an hour later, David's entry procedures were completed, and he went to the sales department after receiving a badge. When David arrived at the sales department, everyone looked at him like a giant panda, which made David a little overwhelmed. David, congratulations on joining our sales department, you will cherish this opportunity in the future. Kui Ziwen said to David in a calm tone. Kui Ziwen didn't dare to target David until he didn't know if David had a relationship with Xing Jun. David nodded slightly. Tongjian, come here. Kui Ziwan shouted at a boy with glasses and a young face. Soon the boy ran over and said to Kui Ziwan, "Manager, are you calling me? You will take David with you in the future, you too, remember to teach him more," Kui Ziwan said to the boy. The boy looked at David with an embarrassed look on his face. "Why, are you not happy?" Kui Ziwan stared. The boy hurriedly shook his head and said, "Yes, yes." Seeing the boy's agreement, Kui Ziwan smiled slightly and said to David, "Go with him, your workstation is next to him." After Kui Ziwan finished speaking, he turned around and went back to the office. The other colleagues in the sales department looked at David with a playful smile, and that Sun Xiaomeng also secretly smiled and sat back in his seat. Chapter 82 Big Brother, my name is Zhang Tongjian, I hope you can take care of. Back at the workstation, Zhang Tongjian stretched out his hand nervously and said to David. David could see that Zhang Tongjian was very afraid of himself, which surprised David. "My name is David Chen, you should take care of me." David stretched out his hand and smiled slightly. No, I've only been here for a few days." "Let's work together," Zhang Tongjian said hurriedly. David has long seen that Zhang Tongjian is not like an old employee. "You seem to be afraid of me?" David asked Zhang Tongjian in confusion. "No, don't be afraid." Zhang Tongjian shook his head, but he didn't dare to look directly at David. "Do you know something?" David knew that Zhang Tongjian must know something, so he was afraid of himself. Zhang Tongjian hesitated for a while, and finally nodded, "Brother, why are you in jail? You don't look like a bad person." When David heard this, he immediately laughed. It turned out that Zhang Tongjian knew that he had been in prison, so he was a little scared. After knowing why Zhang Tongjian was afraid of himself, David didn't hide anything, and told Zhang Tongjian about his own affairs. It didn't take long for the two to get to know each other, and that Zhang Tongjian was no longer afraid of David. "Brother Chen, you're wronged enough, but now that you're out, let's do it well. It's just, Zhang Tongjian said, and began to hesitate. "Just what?" David asked. "Brother Chen, it's just that you were assigned to my group. It is estimated that neither of us can work very long," Zhang Tongjian sighed and said. "What's going on?" David was surprised. Zhang Tongjian opened a folder from the computer, and then said to David, "Brother Chen, these are the accounts that our group needs to recover. The previous salesman left the accounts and left, and now we need to collect them. If we don't come up, we won't be able to do it." David looked at the dense accounts on the computer and frowned slightly. "How many people owe my wife money?" "Brother Chen, what did you say?" Zhang Tongjian was taken aback. "Oh, I said why so many people owe money." David hurriedly changed his mind. "That's right, it's hard to do any business now. I've analyzed it a long time ago. Those who owe money are some difficult customers. It is estimated that the two of us will not be able to collect it." Zhang Tongjian sighed heavily. David finally understood at this time, why after he was assigned to a group with Zhang Tongjian, many people secretly laughed. "Don't worry, the money will not be less, we can get it." David patted Zhang Tongjian's shoulder and encouraged. "You must know that this company belongs to Sonia, the money owed to the company is the money owed to Sonia, and the money owed to Sonia is the money owed to him David will not let anyone owe him money." "Well, let's work together," encouraged by David, Zhang Tongjian nodded his head hard. David began to be familiar with all the arrears in the company, and he would have to get back a lot of this money. Soon, a day passed. David stretched his waist and couldn't help muttering, "This is too much debt, what does the general manager of the company eat? Brother Chen, don't talk nonsense. If you are overheard and report your words, it will be troublesome. When Zhang Tongjian heard David complaining about the general manager, he was so frightened that he hurriedly reminded him. Is it so serious? It's just a general manager, and he was hired. Do you really consider this place your own home and an emperor? David did not expect that the employees were so afraid of Mr. Xing. You must know that Xing Jun is just a professional manager. He was hired by the Sui family with money, and he has not yet reached the point of covering the sky with one hand in the company. It's just that Sonia rarely comes to the company and never participates in the company's affairs, which makes Xing Jun's power more and more powerful. Chapter 83 David, the company stipulates that new employees should invite everyone to have a meal. Where do you plan to arrange everyone? After Sun Xiaomeng got off work, she found David and asked. At this time, everyone in the office looked at David, ready to eat David, because every new employee would be eaten hard. And this rule? Is the board ruled by the board? David was slightly taken aback. Brother Chen, there is this rule. When I came, I invited everyone to have a meal. It cost me nearly 10,000. Zhang Tongjian reminded David in a low voice. David, since you have come to my sales department, you must abide by the rules of the sales department. This rule was set when I was a manager. Kui Ziwen came over and said to David. The rules you set. David smiled coldly, I'm sorry, I don't have money. If you want to eat, then pay for it yourself. You are not beggars. Can you beg me for a meal? After David finished speaking, he turned around and left without ignoring Kui Ziwen's already angry face. This David is too much. What the H3LL, is it because he has something to do with Mr. Xing? He is so defiant and ignores manager Kui. Wang Lanlan jumped out and spoke for Kui Ziwen immediately. That is, even if he is related, he can't talk to manager Kui like this. He even compares us to beggars. Who the H3LL cares about his meal? It seems that he still doesn't know how powerful our sales department is. Let him look good tomorrow. A group of people in the sales department were all talking indignantly. That Zhang Tongjian didn't dare to speak at all, and he was extremely depressed. David's actions today will definitely attract revenge. When they are in a group, he can't hide himself. Hey, he has a F.art relationship. I have already asked President Xing. The reason why President Xing left him is just to make him embarrassed. Kui Ziwen's eyes flashed coldly. He has already asked Xing Jun in a side-by-side manner, and Xing Jun's instruction to him is to make David embarrassed in the company. Although Kui Ziwen didn't know why Xing Jun did this, he dared not listen to the general manager's words. Since David didn't treat the guests, the people in the sales department also left. Just when Kui Ziwen said goodbye to Sun Xiaomeng and was thinking about leaving, Sun Xiaomen's cell phone suddenly rang. The call was from Sun Xiaomen's mother, Li Fengxia. Seeing her mother calling her, Sun Xiaomeng hurriedly answered. Xiaomeng, let me tell you the great news, all the debts owed by Fuiao Decoration have been returned to us, and our company has survived. Li Fengxia's voice was filled with excitement. Really? Sun Xiaomeng was also excited. Then why did Fuiao Decoration suddenly pay back the money? We asked for it many times and didn't give it. Your dad has inquired about it, and it was Lord Tiger who spoke, so frightened that Fuiao Decoration immediately gave the money. Li Fengxia said. Lin Tianhu. Sun Xiaomeng was stunned. It doesn't matter if our family follows him, we don't even know him, so why does Lord Hu help us? I'm also wondering. I remember you said that Zaiwan used his relationship to help us think of a way. I think whether Zaiwan knew who yet, or his friend, so I called you to ask, if Zaiwan is really helping, then you can call him tonight and let's have a meal together. Li Fengxia asked. I'll ask him. Hang up first. Sun Xiaomeng hung up the phone. What's wrong? Do you think you're happy? Kui Zaiwan asked Sun Xiaomen's excited face, so he asked suspiciously. Chapter 84 Zaiwan, did you ask Tiger Lord to help our family to get the account? All the money from Fuyao decoration has been returned to our family, and our family's company has been saved. My dad said that Tiger Lord personally spoke. Sun Xiaomeng looked at Kui Zaiwan expectantly and asked. She really hoped that Kui Zaiwan really did this, so that his parents would not reject the two of them, and in front of his parents, Kui Zaiwan's status would be improved a lot, and he could get to know people like Lin Tianhu. That is very honorable. Master Tiger. Kui Zaiwan was stunned for a moment, but his eyes rolled, and he quickly reacted, I talked to Master Tiger, but I didn't expect Master Tiger to be so efficient. Since he gave the money, then I'm relieved too. Zaiwan, I didn't expect you to really know Tiger Master, you're amazing. Sun Xiaomeng jumped on Kui Zaiwan excitedly, sscd Kui Zaiwan fiercely, and said, my mother said, I'll call you tonight. Let's have dinner, now I want to see, can my dad look down on you? Sun Xiaomeng happily held Kui Zaiwan's arm and walked towards the parking lot together. David on the other side, after returning home, Barbara asked eagerly, David, how was the interview? What position has been arranged for you? Mom, the interview was successful, I became a salesperson, and the treatment was good, David smiled lightly. Hey, it's really great to be a salesperson directly. This is due to Xiaomeng. When we have time, our family will go and thank them. You have a formal job, and I'm relieved. A satisfied smile appeared on Barbara's face. Seeing his mother's happy appearance, David didn't say anything. David, take a shower, change your clothes, we'll go out to eat in a while. Your Uncle Sun called and asked us to have a meal together. Chen Baoqiu walked in from the outside with his mobile phone and said after seeing David. Baoqiu, why did Fuhe invite us to dinner? It stands to reason that people have found a job for David, so we should invite them. Barbara asked inexplicably. It seems that the arrears of Fuhe company have been paid off, and the company has survived, Chen Baoqiu said. That's really good, it's really good people get good rewards. Barbara was also happy for Sun Fuhe when she heard it. After David heard it, he smiled slightly and went into the room to change his clothes. He originally wanted to call Lin Tianhu and ask, but he didn't expect this kid to be very efficient in his work. It seems that the debts that are so heartfelt will be asked by Lin Tianhu. It's all his own money. Sun Fuhe was very happy at the Regal Hotel, so he specially reserved a table here. You must know that Sun Fuhe has not eaten here for a long time, because the price is too expensive, and the company is full of debts, so he has no intention to come. Eat here. This Regal Hotel is stylish. Is it my first time to eat here? Sun Xiaomeng looked at the magnificent hotel in front of her, and she was so excited that she almost jumped up. This is also the property of the Sui family. Speaking of which, we are all bosses. When I eat here, I can get a 20% discount with my work permit, Kui Zaiwan said with some pride. Yes, we come here to eat, and it can be regarded as generating income for the boss. Sun Xiaomeng took Kui Zaiwan's hand and walked in. When they came to a private room, the two pushed the door and walked in. At this time, Sun Fuhe had arrived with Li Fengxia. Good uncle, good aunt, Kui Ziwen greeted Sun Fuhe and Li Fengxia politely after seeing Sun Fuhe and Li Fengxia. Okay, Li Fengxia hurriedly stood up. Ziwen, come and sit down, it's all your family, why are you being polite? Chapter 85. At this time, Sun Fuhe also smiled slightly. Ji Yuan, come and stand next to me, and my father and I will have 2 more drinks in a while. My company's affairs are all thanks to you. Sun Fuhe's attitude towards Kui Ziwen changed 180 degrees, which made Kui Ziwen swell up instantly. Uncle, why are you being polite to me about this trivial matter? It's not just a matter of words, and we are a family. Kui Ziwen said and sat beside Sun Fuhe. Although this was not done by Kui Ziwen, since everyone thinks that he did it, then he will follow the flow and show his strength. Ziwen, I really don't know that you know Tiger Master, don't you know that the boss of Fuyao Decoration Company sent me money, and he looked like a grandson, so he almost knelt down for me, it's so cool now. When Sun Fuhe remembered that scene, his whole person was extremely excited. He has worked for so many years, pretending to be a grandson for others, and he has never been treated like a grandfather before. I am afraid that this feeling will never be forgotten in his life. Uncle, if there is anything going on in the company in the future, just tell me. Don't look at me as a small department manager. There is nothing I can't handle in Horrendal. Kui Ziwen spoke shamelessly, and was not afraid not to expose it, because none of the people here knew Lin Tianhu, and had never even seen him. Who could expose him? Okay, okay. From now on, my uncle's company will depend on you, and I will be a daughter. Everything in the future will be yours. Sun Fuhe now recognizes this Kui Ziwen from the bottom of his heart. Don't worry, uncle, I will definitely treat Xiaomeng well. Kui Ziwen nodded vigorously, excited inside. Okay, I'm hungry, you guys are talking, I'm going to starve to death, hurry up and eat. Sun Xiaomeng interrupted the conversation between the two and said with a pouted mouth. Wait a minute, I informed you Uncle Chen's family, they should be here soon. Sun Fuhe stopped Sun Xiaomeng. Let's have dinner together as a family, what do we ask them to do? It's annoying. When Sun Xiaomeng heard that the David family was coming, her face suddenly became ugly. You child, how can you say that Uncle Chen also saved Dad's life? Sun Fuhe glared at Sun Xiaomeng, and then continued, how was David's interview today? Uncle, David's test was successful. As a department manager, I can still handle this trivial matter. Kui Ziwen directly took the credit for David's successful test to himself. Ziwen, I'm really bothering you. Sun Fuhe gave Kui Ziwen a grateful look. At this moment, the box door was pushed open, and David's family walked in. Sorry, it's a little late. Seeing that Sun Fuhe and the others had already arrived, Chen Baoqiu said apologetically. Old monitor, it's okay, we just arrived, hurry up and sit. Sun Fuhe hurriedly greeted Chen Baoqiu and the others to sit down. And David felt a little surprised after seeing that Kui Ziwen was there, but he didn't say anything. However, Kui Ziwen looked at David with a playful face, and said with a cold smile, David, we met again and asked you to treat yourself, but you ran away. Do you know how difficult it is for me and Xiaomeng to do this? After Kui Ziwen finished speaking, Chen Baoqiu immediately looked at David with a question in his eyes. Barbara asked, David, what's going on? Sun Fuhe also looked at Kui Ziwen with a questioning expression on his face. This David, the interview was successful. There is a rule in our sales department that new employees should treat guests to dinner, but he said that he had no money and ran away, which made me and Ziwen humiliated. Sun Xiaomeng looked at David angrily and said. Chapter 86 David, is that so? Chen Baokuo asked with a cold face when he heard this. Dad, I am, shut up for me. Chen Baokuo interrupted David and shouted vigorously, our family is poor, but we can't afford a meal. If someone helps you, you have to abide by their rules. Don't you understand the etiquette? How can you still work in the company in the future? Chen Baokuo roared, and David didn't say a word. Old monitor, this child David is also trying to save money. It's a big deal. If you don't ask, please don't ask. Today's meal is congratulations to David for his successful exam. Sun Fuhe hurriedly tried to smooth things out, and he couldn't let Chen Baokuo and David quarrel. Uncle, in fact, Xiao Meng and I are not different from David's meal. The main reason is to let him increase his relationship with his colleagues and start work in the future. Kui Ziwen said this, making David even more stingy. Yes, this is David's fault. I will ask him to make it up tomorrow. The company's rules cannot be broken from us. Chen Baokuo looked at Kui Ziwen apologetically. I think so, there is no need for tomorrow. After dinner, I will contact a few colleagues in the company. Let's go to sing together. The money will be released by David. I will explain it to the people in the company. Kui Ziwen said. All right, Chen Baokuo nodded again and again. Ziwen, the conditions of your Uncle Chen's house are not very good, but you should watch it, but you can't spend more, Sun Fuhe said to Kui Ziwen. Don't worry, uncle, it won't cost 200 or 300, Kui Ziwen smiled slightly. Fuhe, this is Xiaoman's object, right? He is a talented person, and he does everything well. Chen Baokuo followed Sun Fuhe and praised Kui Ziwen. No, all the debts from my company have to be returned. Thanks to him, Ziwen got to know Lin Tianhe from Horrendal, and Lin Tianhe got the money back in one sentence. Sun Fuhe is also full of smiles, and he is quite satisfied with Kui Ziwen, his son-in-law. After David heard this, he was stunned for a moment. He didn't know when the credit for Sun Fuhe's company came back to Kui Ziwen. Lin Tianhe. Chen Baokuo was taken aback for a moment. Is that the biggest gangster in Horrendal? It's better not to know this kind of person. Don't look at the prestige now, sooner or later you will be unlucky. Chen Baokuo used to be a civil servant, so he looked down on little gangsters. Uncle Chen, what you said is wrong. It is a supreme honor to know Tiger Lord in Horrendal. How can you say that? Just like your son, I am afraid that you will never have the chance to know Tiger Lord in your life. In the future, you don't say such things, so as not to cause trouble. Kui Ziwen was very angry at Chen Baokuo's words, so he said coldly. After Chen Baokuo listened, he closed his mouth and stopped talking. Old class leader, society is different now, and we have to keep up with the situation in some things, Sun Fuhe said lightly. Chen Baokuo still didn't speak, but in his heart, he just didn't like people like Lin Tianhe. This is why David did not dare to let his parents know that he knew Lin Tianhe. If his parents knew about it, they would not even want his son. At the wine table, Kui Ziwen has been drinking with a proud attitude, feeling the feeling of being touted by others. It's just that David didn't drink alcohol from the beginning to the end, and he didn't respect Kui Ziwen for a drink, which made Kui Ziwen feel a little uncomfortable. David, a big man, why don't you drink? Kui Ziwen asked David slightly sarcastically. David smiled slightly. It's not that I don't know how to drink it, because for me, there is no difference between wine and tea, it is better to drink tea and save some money. Chapter 87 Kui Ziwen was stunned for a moment, and then laughed loudly. What do you mean, you can drink well, don't you? I haven't been drunk yet, David said lightly. This time, Kui Ziwen instantly became interested. Well, let's compete against each other. I've never met an opponent when I drink, and I just had a good time today, Kui Ziwen said, and asked the waiter to bring up a box of liquor. David, when will you be able to drink baijiu? Don't talk nonsense, is there any outsider here? What can you do? Barbara frowned slightly. Mom, don't worry, I'm measured, David comforted his mother. Chen Baoqiu also wanted to speak out to stop it, but Sun Fuhe grabbed him. Old squad leader, young people are very brave, you forgot that we often fight wine in the army, let them play. When Chen Baoqiu saw this, he couldn't say anything, so he could only glance at David helplessly. Ziwen, you're a big drinker, let David order it, but don't drink too much, it's just lively and lively. Sun Fuhe knew that Kui Ziwen was a big drinker. Once, when Kui Ziwen drank more than a pound of white wine, he could take a taxi home by himself. Don't worry, uncle, I'll have 2 drinks, just let him have one. Kui Ziwen opened the bottle and started pouring wine into the glass. This cup is too small, bring 2 big bowls, David said to the waiter. Kui Ziwen was stunned for a moment, and looked at David in surprise. You can't drink from a bowl, can you? David asked with a faint smile. How is it possible, even if I blow it with a bottle, I am the same, Kui Ziwen sneered. In his opinion, David was deliberately pretending to frighten himself. The more David was like this, the more proof he couldn't drink. Soon, the big bowl was brought, and a bowl of wine was full of a bottle. Tell me, how do you drink it? Kui Ziwen asked David provocatively. I'm afraid of trouble, so I did. After speaking, David actually drank a bowl of white wine in one go. Seeing this, everyone was taken aback. Chen Baoqiu frowned slightly, and his eyes were full of distress. David, are you drinking? What's the difference between this and suicide? Don't be brave, Dad, I'm fine. David smiled at Chen Baoqiu, then turned the bowl upside down, looked at Kui Ziwen and said, it's your turn. Kui Ziwen frowned. He really didn't expect David to dare to drink all the wine in one breath. Although he has a good amount of alcohol, this way of drinking is really afraid of ruining his body. If you can't drink, don't drink it, what's the comparison? Chen Baoqiu saw that Kui Ziwen was a little embarrassed, so he gave Kui Ziwen a step to speak. It's okay if you don't drink, then it proves that you are cowardly. David looked at Kui Ziwen provocatively. Cowardly? Kui Ziwen suddenly became angry when he heard this. I've never been counseled when I drink. After speaking, Kui Ziwen closed his eyes and drank a bowl of wine. After drinking it, Kui Ziwen's face instantly turned red. David picked up the wine bottle and poured 2 more bowls of wine. David, enough! Seeing this, Chen Baoqiu got up and shouted at David. David didn't speak, but looked at Kui Ziwen directly, with a strong provocation in his eyes. Don't worry, let's continue drinking. At this moment, Kui Ziwen only felt his anger rising and shouted loudly to Chen Baoqiu. David's eyes narrowed slightly, he picked up the wine, and drank it again. When these liquors arrived in David's stomach, there was no difference with water, and the spiritual power in David absorbed these liquors. Seeing David drinking another bowl of white wine, everyone was shocked. Sun Xiaomeng pulled Kui Ziwen and said, if you can't drink it, we won't drink it. He's barefoot and not afraid of wearing shoes, so let's not compare him. Chapter 88 That's right, Ziwen, we don't drink anymore, our lives are precious, so why are we fighting him? At this time, Li Fengxia also stood up and persuaded Kui Ziwen. They are really afraid that Kui Ziwan will eat a bowl of wine and the whole person will be in trouble, then it will be troublesome. At this time, Kui Ziwan's eyes were a little red, and he looked at David with a little dizziness. Seeing that David's eyes were full of provocation, he gritted his teeth, picked up the bowl and drank it. After 2 bowls of wine, Kui Ziwan's face has turned from red to white, and the whole face looks a little hideous. Seeing Kui Ziwan like that, David sat back with satisfaction. Drinking it, Kui Ziwan would definitely die of drinking, and his parents would definitely not let him drink any more. You, why did you sit down? Drink if you can, drink again. When Kui Ziwan saw David sitting down, he immediately shouted. But just after he finished speaking, a burst of blood suddenly surged up, and he spit it out in one mouthful, directly spraying Li Fengxia all over her body. What? Li Fengxia screamed, looking at the filth on her body, she almost vomited herself. Seeing this, Sun Fuhe frowned tightly, and his face was ugly. Chen Baoqiu glared at David, then quickly got up and said, Fuhe, hurry up and send Ziwan home, we're leaving too, these 2 children are real, what are they called? Sun Fuhe could only nod his head, it was all done like this, and there was no way to stay and chat. But just when Chen Baoqiu wanted to leave with David, Kui Ziwan stopped him directly. Can't go, Kui Ziwan's eyes were hazy, how can you just leave after you agreed to sing? Are you afraid of spending money? Ziwan, you've been drinking too much, wait until another day, Sun Fuhe persuaded Kui Ziwan. No, I have to go today. I've already made reservations with everyone in the group. If I don't go, I'll lose face. Kui Ziwan shook his head, he must let David sing. This time, Sun Fuhe looked at Chen Baoqiu with some embarrassment. Dad, you go back first, I'll ask them to sing, David said to Chen Baoqiu. Chen Baoqiu couldn't say anything at this time, he could only tell David, don't be too late, don't drink any more. As Chen Baoqiu said, he took out a stack of money from his pocket. There were parts and pieces, and it was more than 300 yuan. You take this money, I know it costs a lot to sing. Chen Baoqiu put the money into David's hands. David wanted to refuse, but he knew that with his father's character, he couldn't refuse, so he simply collected the money. At this time, Sun Fuhe also took out his wallet, took out 1,000 yuan and handed it to David. David, I'll give you a little more, and prepare for emergencies, in case the money is not enough. Dad, you usually don't give me money so generously. Sun Xiaomeng snatched the money from Sun Fuhe's hand and said. You kid, hurry up and give the money to David, Sun Fuhe said to Sun Xiaomeng. It's not the same when I take it. He won't have enough money by then, so I'll just make it up. Sun Xiaomeng put the money in her pocket. Uncle Sun, I have enough money, it's really not enough, I can make it up to Xiaomeng, David smiled at Sun Fuhe. Sun Fuhe sighed, that was the only way. The group walked out of the box. Sun Fuhe was about to settle accounts. Kui Ziwan followed him staggeringly, I have a work permit here, and I can get a 20% discount. Kui Ziwan photographed his work permit on the front desk, but the cashier lady at the front desk didn't even look at it. Sir, for your consumption, this hotel has already waived the bill, you don't need to pay, the cashier lady at the front desk politely said to Sun Fuhe. Chapter 89 Sun Fuhe was stunned all of a sudden, he didn't understand how he could be exempted from the bill. Kui Ziwan, who was on the side, immediately laughed when he heard it. Haha, I didn't expect my work card to be so useful. After I took it out, it was actually free of charge. The Sui family is really particular about it. Hearing this, Sun Fuhe couldn't help but nodded. He also thought that Kui Ziwen's work certificate played a role. After all, Kui Ziwen also worked for the Sui family. Only the cashier looked at Kui Ziwen with contempt and said nothing. The reason why the order was waived was for David. Almost all the staff in the Regal Hotel knew about the relationship between David and Sonia. Seeing David over for dinner, of course, the order will be waived. Who dares to accept the money from the future uncle of the Sui family? The group walked out of the hotel, and Sun Fuhei followed Chen Baoqiu to say goodbye to each other. Okay, don't talk about it, my body stinks to death, it's all to blame for this David, did he drink like that? He gave Ziwen too much, Li Fengxia muttered and stared at David angrily. David did not speak, while Chen Baoqiu followed Li Fengxia apologetically and left with Barbara. Sun Fuhei also followed Li Fengxia home, leaving only David, Kui Ziwen, and Sun Xiaomeng. David, you are drunk, take a taxi by yourself, don't dirty my car, Sun Xiaomeng gave David a cold look and said. David drank Kui Ziwen like this, Sun Xiaomeng is still angry now. David, we're going to Dynasty KTV, don't run away halfway. After Kui Ziwen finished speaking staggeringly, he was pulled into the car by Sun Xiaomeng, and then disappeared without a trace. Looking at the speeding car, David's eyes were filled with chills. This Kui Ziwen was finding fault one after another, and David should teach him a good lesson. And that Sun Xiaomeng, if it wasn't for Sun Fuhei's sake, David wouldn't be accustomed to her. Reaching out to stop a taxi, David wanted to rush towards Dynasty KTV, but at this moment the phone rang. It was Wang Hanin who called, and David hurriedly connected. Brother David, where did your family go? My mother made some dumplings and brought them to you, but found no one at home. Wang Hanin asked. We came out to eat. David explained. Oh, are you finished eating now? I think the house is too boring, and I want to go out for a walk. Wang Hanin's meaning is obvious, she wants David to accompany her around. David hesitated and said, I'm going to go to KTV now. I succeeded in the interview today. I sing along with my colleagues, oh, then forget it, Wang Hanin's tone was a little lost. Where are you? Shall we go together? David said suddenly. He was about to bring Wang Hanin to the company, and he happened to follow these people to get acquainted. Is this suitable? Wang Hanin wanted to go, but was a little embarrassed. What's wrong with this? I want to take you to the company tomorrow, there's nothing wrong with getting to know you first, I'll pick you up. After David finished speaking, he asked the taxi to go to their community to pick up Wang Hanin before rushing to Dynasty KTV. At this time of Dynasty KTV, Kui Ziwen and the others have arrived and opened a big private room. What's going on with this David? He hasn't come for so long, so he won't run away, right? He's so poor, I'm really afraid he can't pay, Wang Lanlan muttered. Everyone else also agreed, for fear that David would not come, so who will pay for the private room today? Tongjian, if David doesn't come, you will be together, and you will pay for today's consumption. Kui Ziwen leaned on the sofa and said to Zhang Tongjian who was sitting in the corner with blurred eyes. Zhang Tongjian nodded reluctantly. Although he was reluctant, he did not dare to refuse. Chapter 90. Seeing that someone has paid for it, the others are excited and start ordering fruit plates and beer. Zhang Tongjian is praying that David must come, otherwise he will be bleeding again today, and his credit card is almost out of limit. Kui Ziwen was lying on the sofa, let Sun Xiaomeng press his head, and drink some water. The drunk state was obviously better, but his head was still dizzy. I tell you, it's fine if David doesn't come. If he comes after a while, you give me a hard drink. Whoever gets him drunk will double the bonus this month, Kui Ziwen said to the crowd. As soon as they heard the prize doubled, everyone was immediately excited. Don't worry, Manager Kui, I promise to let David go out lying down. If he dares to come, he can't find bay for what I want to drink. All of them are gearing up. If so many people want to drink David, David will definitely get drunk. Even Zhang Tongjian is moved when he hears that the bonus is doubled, but he will not really drink David. Just as everyone was drinking and singing, the box door was pushed open, and David led Wang Hanin to arrive. Seeing David coming, everyone was a little stunned, especially seeing Wang Hanin beside David, which made many men's eyes bright. Even Kui Ziwen, who was dizzy and squinted, saw after Wang Hanin, her eyes widened instantly. Although Sun Xiaomeng is also beautiful, she has a youthful vibe on Wang Hanin. Although Wang Hanin has worked as a dancer in a bar, her heart is still very conservative. David, I thought you were afraid of spending money, so you won't come. Kui Ziwen glanced at David, then continued to look at Wang Hanin and asked, who is this little girl? Hello everyone, my name is Wang Hanin, I'm brother David's neighbor, I hope I didn't disturb everyone. Wang Hanin introduced himself politely. No interruptions, sit down quickly, eat fruit, there is fruit here. A bunch of men are trying their best to be courteous, but no one cares about David. Then Kui Ziwen also coughed slightly, my name is Kui Ziwen, and I'm David's manager. When Wang Hanin heard that Kui Ziwen was the manager, he stretched out his hand nervously and said, hello Manager Kui, hello. Kui Ziwen's eyes glowed with silver light, and he tightly grasped Wang Hanin's hand. Everyone could see that Kui Ziwen looked straight at Wang Hanin, which made Sun Xiaomeng angry. Miss Wang, where are you now? Kui Ziwen didn't feel Sun Xiaomen's angry eyes at all, and still asked Wang Hanin with a smile. I don't have a job, Wang Hanin said a little embarrassedly. Hearing this, Kui Ziwen smiled even brighter. He took out a business card from his pocket. This is my business card. If Miss Wang is interested in our company, she can come to work in our company. Really? When Wang Hanin heard this, his eyes widened in surprise. Of course, I'm a department manager, so I still have this right, Kui Ziwen said proudly. Kui Ziwen, Sun Xiaomeng couldn't take it any longer, so she roared. Only then did Kui Ziwen think of Sun Xiaomeng, and hurriedly followed Wang Hanin to distance himself. All sit down. Wang Hanin seemed to see something, walked over to David with a slight smile, stepped on David's arm skillfully and said, Brother David, can you introduce me to these colleagues of yours? David was frightened by Wang Hanin's skilled movements. In front of so many people, Wang Hanin's movements were too intimate. But Wang Hanin did this on purpose, in order to make these men here give up on him, and to prevent Sun Xiaomeng from being jealous. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.